Part 4. Homecoming. New Purgatory. It was about time I started keeping my own journal. Before I thought I could trust Alex with everything, but these last few months have changed him. I'm not afraid, I just don't know where his head is at. When Elias was around, he kept him grounded, reasonable, or at least as reasonable as you can be when you're fighting a private war against a madman. If Elias was the ground, Jack Newsom was the spark that ruined everything. Truth be told, I don't know if his inability to show the entire picture or his charm really influenced Alex. It may as well have been the way he lived, his ability to accomplish his goals. Whether Alex chooses to recognize it himself or not, I've seen him start down Jack's path. I won't let him sacrifice people. I saw the pain on his face back in the tower. He was ready to die for his friends. As dumb as it sounds, it was what kept him sane. Acknowledging the loss, not using it to an end. Not like now. Now I see a man who isn't in pain. Death is just an obstruction, a roadblock that is stopping him from winning another war. I look into Alex's eyes and I see the Reaper. I know there is good there. He wouldn't fight without a good reason. I just fear that even if he manages to best Baruga, he'll find another reason, and another, and another. What if it gets to the point where he's not the freedom fighter, but the tyrant that doesn't know what to do with peace? I can't let that happen. I won't. I love him, but not enough to watch him become what he hates. The sad truth is every day it seems more inevitable rather than just assuming the worst. There are days where he surprises me with his compassion and charity, but those are fewer now. We're headed to China now. Returning is a better word. This is where it all began to fall apart. Not just for Alex, but for all of us. For Jack and Nayala. For Elias, for Janet, for me. The place Elias died because of an ambush. I fear how that will reflect on Alex's mind. Because this time, there won't be any running away from an army. We'll be running towards it. I hope we're ready. Mentally, I'm just not there. Alex closed Layla's journal. It was late, and he was having a coffee. The mechanical problems threw his flight off schedule. Not that the timing really mattered anymore, but he wanted to be awake in case it happened again. Reading the journal was difficult. The content was what Alex wished Layla had told him. She did in Cairo and you listened. But China pushed it all over the edge, and she saw it coming. I was too focused on the goal, on the end of it all. I didn't stop to see what was in front of me, he thought. China. The first time he was there, he had lost his best friend. The second time, he lost Sam Gates, a man that saved him from being eaten by cannibals. Gajil, the pit fighter, who saved the team by fighting until he couldn't move his limbs. And Talia, the girl confused from birth about her path in life, only to be killed shortly after finding it. They all meant something to Alex. He could never forget them, never looked at them like numbers. He only wished he could have made Layla understand. He lost a part of himself when each one of them died, but the end game was always peace, an end to tyranny, not to start it up again if there was no one left to fight. At the end of it all, Alex knew Layla was right. Her death sparked the rest of what she assumed would happen. Peace was still his goal, but peace would be a byproduct of his revenge. Revenge against Baruger. It would give the rest of the world freedom for a time. Freedom from a puppet master whose technology had saved a world he wanted to shape in his own image. But the path there was the wrong one. Shaley, Keeley, Hollis, they had become tools, a means to an end, a way to finish this last fight, this last war. 4 people against 7 armies, an impossible battle to win even with one last trick. He couldn't let them fall, not like the others, not this time. No, this was his price to pay, as it had been all along. Alex pulled himself from his thoughts and back onto the controls. What was, and no amount of self-reflection would change that. Then he heard footsteps from behind him. Are we there yet? It was Shaley. Another hour or so. Don't get too excited, we're not going to Alonso's. We can't. If anyone sees us. Yeah, I know, Alex. Shaley cut him off. Where are we going then? Alex half smiled. The one place no one will look. An excellent performance, Bernard. Why, you almost had me convinced that the Mossad still existed, Thomas Baruger said to a gagged man in chains. He was in one of the various cell blocks located below his research lab. Ah, but that might be because it wasn't you. My latest work. A person stepped out from the shadows and beside Beruger. It was an exact copy of Joseph Bernard, down to the most delicate features. Pockmarks, scars, the way his hair was trimmed. Nothing was out of place. A prototype fooled the entire council. Can you imagine what I could do with the whole table, with the leaders of all those insignificant specks of dirt? No more playing senseless politics. No more waiting while our lives drift away. Real progress can be made when we finally begin to live as was intended when Franklin and I designed the Cloudbreaker reactor. Not just struggle on day by day, trying to please the greater whole. The real Bernard seemed resigned to his confinement, and Beruger stopped himself from saying more. It was wasted on the machine and the true counselor. Go ahead and make sure the armies are on their way, and then prepare the deployment of my army. The other nations will be surprised, but I'm not leaving this to chance. The Bernard bot nodded and left. As for the counselor, Beruger just shook his head. That was until a beeping went off on his comm. Mikhail, those photos were perfect. The shadow walked into the light. He was visibly distressed, but didn't announce it in his tone of voice. This isn't right, the shadow said. Oh, Mikhail, I thought we were past this. I gave you what you wanted, so now you work for me. I thought you would be happy to have all your memories returned to you, Beruger mocked. Mikhail had not adjusted. With his two lives collided, Mikhail Koslov wanted the shadow dead for what he had done to the world, to his friends. His last life's morals had guaranteed that. He had become the monster he sought to destroy with the database in his mind, and he'd made it worse by betrayal. But instead of the man killing the machine, he would have taken the man away. Take the memories away. Take them or release me, Mikhail said. Now this is a surprise. Take away the machine and the man becomes what the scientists intended. Broken. The irony of searching for your memories only to want to revert to your previous state. Now you understand why they did what they did to you. No normal man could handle the memories of what you have done. No normal man could endure the mental stresses of your sins. You were chosen. Fuck you. Mikhail's voice was strained, a side effect of Beruger's control, constant torture that he could now feel. Fortunately for you, that suits me. I don't need the shell of an assassin questioning his orders. It gives me no pleasure to torture my favorite dog when it decides to bark at me. Kill this bound man, and I'll be happy to hit your reset button, Beruger announced. Beruger walked away from the cell, leaving Koslov behind. It was a final cruelty before taking the pain away. Mikhail remembered everything, losing his team in Grozny, nearly dying under the rubble. The subtle changes that were torture, starvation, and fighting his fellow prisoners to death. All of this was his burden to bear. Everything he had done, killing the Tsar and plunging the world into another dark age. All that regret settled at the forefront of his mind. It grew even worse when he thought of Alexander Velasco, the street rat from New Purgatory who had only wanted to be the Shadow's friend. Mikhail tossed that aside, and for what? Memories that only brought more pain. With the humanity brought out of him, Mikhail wished Alexander would come to Berlin to take his revenge and end the Shadow's suffering. Yet in their last meeting, he had kept him alive. But Mikhail had seen Beruger's soldiers, his base, and if Alexander wasn't already dead, there was no way he could get close to Beruger. Now Mikhail was once again in charge of his own suffering, and the way to end it. He slid open the bars to the prison cell and reached for his survival knife. The real Joseph Bernard looked up at Koslov, then dropped his head, resigned to his fate. Koslov, with his left hand, pulled Beruger's head upright by his hair, and then ran the serrated edge along the counselor's throat. Blood ran down the blade. Bernard would die shortly, but Mikhail didn't wait around. Instead, he made for Beruger's office. In a quiet corner, one of Beruger's soldiers stood and watched the brutality inflicted with indifference. He slung his rifle over his shoulder and reached down to adjust his outward-facing watch once. As the monster strode by, he could not have known about the camera that just captured his actions, about the transmission being sent out far away from here. No one questioned the soldier or caught him speaking into his comm, nor as he closed the cell door as an excuse to ensure he had taken a clear picture of the fallen Joseph Bernard, not even as he marked the recipient of the photos as General Cale Woodson. Section S4. even with New Purgatory being changed from the inside out, was largely the same. Half-destroyed buildings with concrete runoff into the streets, busted water pipes leaking on the inside of buildings, vermin scurrying and looking for bits of food. The largest difference was the lack of refugees. Janet had told Alex months ago that many of them had been moved inward to help rebuild. Only raiders, scabbers, and the last dregs of Morrison's Marines occupied the dark outer core. Back where we started. Back where I started. Alex hid the bird under a tarp next to a building that was mostly upright. He'd left it on the road, but he didn't care. This area wasn't known for its thorough traffic. His team followed him through a blasted wall in the building. "Well, shit," he said aloud. "Just like I left it." There were various ammo casings on the ground, old, moldy mattresses, a toilet seat set out in the open, and a leaky drain pipe that dripped water every few seconds. Alex turned to face the members of his team. "This is where I got my start. Make yourselves at home." Alex made for a room in the back, covered by a sheet, while his team stared at each other, unable to comprehend the mess they found themselves in. Janet's return to New Purgatory was a slow dragging of the feet. She felt defeated, and now she had lost her last friend, and maybe kill him if ordered to. She had spent the afternoon fielding phone calls from the other ambassadors. Most of them started with, "What do we do now?" Janet had no answer for them, except that they should do what they were told. There was no play here, no maneuvering. The council had gotten its way, and Janet was powerless to strike back. No number of bullets or bad attitudes could change Joseph Bernard's mind. She set a half-empty bottle of tequila on her desk and was pulled back to earth by the sound of another call coming in. She didn't bother to look where it came from, and instead picked up the phone. "Trishella," she answered. "General Trishella, this is Kyle Woodson." "No, I don't know what to do next, and I wish people would stop asking me." "That's not why I called, General Trishella." "I really wish people would stop calling me that." "You'll get used to it eventually, General," Kale replied. "Turn on your computer." Janet did as she was told. Suddenly images began to appear. Gruesome images of a man cut open by the throat. Not just any man, she thought. Jesus Christ, Alex killed Bernard? That was my first thought, too. Now look at these images and compare the timestamp. Janet looked at the new images. They were of a bound and gagged Bernard who had not yet departed the living. The other images were of Bernard preparing to attend the council meeting in Jerusalem. The timestamps were marked same day, same time. "The first set of images were taken in Berlin, Janet," Woodson said. Janet rubbed her forehead. "Okay, what the fuck?" "Baruga has no idea about the depth of shit he's in now. If Alex's intel on the base that was here is correct, then Baruga's already changing people. Bernard was one of the first. What can we do with this, Woodson?" "We hold on to it. We hold on to it. I'm not sure I can get a hold of anyone in the Jerusalem Council just now. Who the hell knows how many others Baruga might have turned?" Janet had perked up by now. "We can use it. We can get Alex back in." "That reminds me. How is he?" Janet stopped. She had said too much. "I don't know. I haven't been able to—" "Don't bullshit me, General. I wouldn't be good at my job if I didn't know he was in New Purgatory right now." "We talked and said our goodbyes already. He told me what everyone already expects, but I didn't know he was coming back here," Janet explained. "You know he was efficient while he was here, if a bit crass. I can see why he wanted you to be the leader instead," Woodson said. "What do you plan to do with that information?" "I'll respect you and him well enough to not tell anyone, especially our common enemy. Personally, I'd say keep him in the hovel he's found. Maybe he'll come to his senses and grant us enough time to find a way to use these pictures. My people have eyes on him, and I'm making sure no one else tries to find him. That effort would be much easier if he were in a more secure location. Perhaps that club of yours you call a headquarters. In the meantime, you and I have travel plans to make." I hate to say I was right, but there it is. China, where everything takes a turn for the worse. Gajil, Talia, Sam Gates, all dead. To say we were successful feels like a disgrace to me. Yeah, we destroyed Beijing, and yeah, Talia's people are free. But it was at the cost of 3 good people who could still be alive if it wasn't for this fight. Alex's attitude had changed. I thought I was getting through to him. I was at Cairo. He managed to stop killing in cold blood. He refused. He showed the people there that there's another way to live without senseless butchery. Then we get here and all that changes again. There is a war going on in Alex's mind. I'm not sure if a good man and a strong leader, a strong revolutionary, can exist in the same person. I can't help but wonder if I did this. Was it me that took away his killer instinct, which deafened his spirit to fight? Is that what got 3 people killed? Maybe it was just terrible odds, and out in the open ground war where we were severely outnumbered. Still, this will hurt Alex. Gates saved his life and was filling a void that Elias had left. Now he's gone. Talia has been with us since the beginning. Alex told me she finally found her purpose, what she was meant to do, and now she is gone. I don't know where this all ends. I know I can't keep pulling Alex in the opposite direction of his goals. I need to talk to him. Need to tell him that he needs to leave the fighting to someone else. If he doesn't, then I'll have to leave on my own. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep watching my friends die. Alex closed the journal and tossed it aside. He laid flat on his old bed. He didn't care that it was soaked in tepid water and smelled like shit. It was like going back to his first home. Part of him wanted to keep going through Layla's journal, but it killed him that she died wanting to change who he was, likely hating who he was. And before she had a chance to change anything, to threaten or warn him, she was dead. That had been his fault. For the first time since Layla Lansfield passed, Alex cried. "I tried," he said aloud. Unfiltered words better left for his own journal spewed from his mouth, but he couldn't stop. He didn't want to. "I was gonna get us away from all this shit. It would have been over. We could have gone anywhere, but I pushed too hard, too fast." He stopped when he heard rustling from the other room, and then bootsteps. "Crying doesn't suit a man with a body count as high as yours, Alex." The leader of the Sentinels forced himself to sit up. "What the hell do you want, Hollis?" "Answers. From you, from Baruger. Mostly you right now. Not sure how I can get paid since the 4 of us are blackballed from the rest of the known world." Alex shook his head. "That's a fair question. Worry about being successful on this last go-around, and I'll make sure you're taken care of." Hollis gave Alex an uncomfortable half-smile, then slapped the younger man on the thigh as he sat down beside him. "Well, see, that's just what I'm worried about, Alex. Being taken care of. I get the feeling this might be one of those missions you and your crews are famous for. The kind that people don't come back from. Most people, anyway." "I never said otherwise. Walk out the goddamn blast in the wall if you're that worried." Hollis shook his head. "You know I've worked for a lot of rotten sons of bitches before. Never met one quite as sure of himself as you. Never met one that cried alone and talked to himself either, too. So what makes you think we get out of this alive, kid? Huh? 7 armies in the capital of Machine Fuck Central, but you have it all figured out?" "Neither of us are most people, Hollis. Bad odds haven't stopped me before, and it won't stop me now. Look at it like this. If I die, I get what I want. If I live, I get what I want. I'll take those odds because I win either way. Will you?" Hollis's easy but hardened smile dissipated. "Here I am, sitting on the brink of another world war, and I'm questioning my ideals. I don't trust you, Alex. Low words maybe, coming from a bounty hunter, but they still carry weight. Nothing personal, but you don't fool me like those 2 in the other room. They follow your vision for freedom in this new world, but I see you for what you really are. Just a man, all too ready to become a martyr and get his revenge along the way. I believe in winning and reaping the reward. You want to make a mess and leave it for everybody else." "You don't have to believe why I started this crusade, Hollis. In fact, there are a lot of people who think the way that you do. That I just wanted to start a fight I couldn't win out of some misguided sense of honor. It's all bullshit. I started this fight because I knew it was the right thing to do. Because before the Crusaders, I lost my family to the same greedy men and women that put the world in the state it's in now. I wasn't ready to see that happen again. You know what it's like. You had to figure out a way to survive from one day to the next, so you hunt people and bring them to other people who pay you for it. Me, I'm taking from those same people you work for. I'm taking from them because they don't care enough to give. They want it all. I don't want to live in a world where they control everything. Those people had their chance and look what happened. The liberties they took, because wealth and power weren't enough, led to a world in front of you now. John Morrison was the image of that world. Thomas Beruger, I don't know him well enough. His intentions may have been good at some point, maybe a long time ago when he and Morrison's father built the Cloudbreaker reactors. But now you've seen what he's done. He's turned this world with no rules and regulations into his own playground where he experiments on whoever he wants to advance his own regime. I'm fighting against that because it's the right thing to do, Hollis, because if we just let it slide, then this world doesn't have a chance to grow on its own. If Beruger still breathes, all of us are in danger. That's why I started my fight. That's why I keep fighting. The revenge just makes it more personal. Hollis stared at Alex for a few moments. It was the most he'd ever heard the man say, and for just a moment he understood why so many people had followed Alex before he had. There was knowledge in his words, maybe part propaganda, part revisionist history, but that didn't matter. Alex was a man that could influence other people. Can appreciate that. Guess that means I'm with you. Alex raised an eyebrow. Just like that? Just like that. Help you set things right, collect my fee. Hell, maybe even get put out of a job. Then that's what you'll get, Keller. Hollis gave Alex a nod, then moved to get up, but Vixer rushed into the room. Alex, get out here. Looks like a fight. Soldiers, squads of them, all wearing New Purgatory's colors. Janet wasn't kidding. She was going to do what she had to do. Alex lifted his rifle, but none of the soldiers did the same. A masked and helmeted Marine walked up to Alex and pulled down his balaclava. Tyrese? Alex said aloud. No time. Get your team and come with me. Within an hour, Alex was sitting at the large oak desk in Alonso's. He was back at the apartment, a place he never thought he'd see again. Tyrese had the club workers bring up coffee, but Alex declined it. Vixer and Ferris inhaled it, and Keller let his sit as he watched the steam rise from the mug. What the hell is going on, Vale? You're getting some serious shit for bringing us here. Where's Janet? Tyrese, who had shed his helmet and balaclava, was sitting with his arms crossed. She's gone. Off to Berlin with the rest of the delegation from the council. Beruger has a massive army with their support. So you're going to try to persuade me not to go? Alex asked. Tyrese smiled. No, Alex, I know you too well to try to do that. Everyone is focused on Berlin, so no one is watching us here at home. Janet wanted to make sure you got some real rest. How did you know where we were? Just because I'm an ambassador doesn't mean I don't keep track of our history. Australia gave us a heads up that you were back in town, but they weren't sure where. S4 was a turning point in your life, and you, Alex, like to return to such places. Alex didn't have an answer. Instead, he fished for a smoke in his coat before remembering he had run out. Tyrese reached into his own and tossed him a pack. So are you coming with us? Alex said as he lit up the cigarette. Part of me wants to, but you already know my answer to that. Yeah, Alex explained. 2 pieces on different boards now. I'm glad you embraced it, Tyrese. I wasn't a soldier. I know that. Survival's one thing. Fighting a war, well, I don't think anything can ever prepare you for that. I certainly wasn't ready for it. You and me both, Alex replied. The other members of the team watched the interaction between the 2 men. Shaylee and Vixer had remembered the atmosphere always being tense between them. They were politically and morally opposed in most matters of the heart or battle, but now there was a mutual respect, or at least an understanding. Do you have a plan? Tyrese asked. I do, but I already know you won't like it. Then I'll take my leave. Tyrese stood up and made for the door, but before he left, turned back around. I almost forgot. Tyrese reached into his coat. Alex saw him produce a pistol. No, not just any pistol. Eli's pistol, Alex thought. Tyrese set it down on the table. Janet wanted you to have it. She thought this would be the right time. She's ready to put that part of her life behind her. Alex understood the meaning. The Crusaders were dead. All of them. Those that survived changed or evolved. In this world, those concepts meant different things. Tell her I said thank you. Tyrese nodded and left. Alex stared at the carbon-scarred chrome pistol across the table from him. It brought back the memories of Yankee Stadium all those years ago, of survival, the first inkling of Alexander wanting to lead a revolution. Eli, Alex said aloud, as if no one else was in the room with him. When it came to survival in New Purgatory, it was hard to choose your friends. Alexander Velasco knew that well, but was fortunate to have found Elias Laner. It had been a month since Yankee Stadium. Elias always had that damn pistol in his hands now. It was for the better, though. Alex got in the habit of swapping rifles off any Marines he killed, but Elias kept reloading the same gun. They had been traveling through the outskirts, trying their best to avoid patrols. They didn't have a plan, just two young men doing their best. Occasionally they would travel in larger groups, but that was a fast way to get ambushed by Marines. They were squatting in a blown-out building in the S4 section. Elias was fiddling with his gun, and Alex writing in his journal. Dinner was a combination of old, stale power bars, looted from a perfectly plundered supermarket. Some rations they took off a Marine patrol, and boiled water, which was the closest thing to liquor they had. Elias, like always, ate half of his power bar before setting it off to the side. Alex had asked him about that once. He said he'd rather be hungry. I kept his drive going. Alex didn't need any other motivation. He ate until there was nothing left, and drank as much water as he could boil. This was no life. Not that either of them knew any better. What are we doing out here? Alex asked, closing his journal and looking up at Elias. Surviving? Yeah, but are we living? The only people living are up in the towers. The rest of us can rot for all they care, or join the Marines. You know, I've thought about it, just to get out of this, whatever this is. Elias shook his head. I don't need to remind you of what they did to you, to us, to your mother. That stopped Alex. Elias always had a way of bringing him back down to earth, even if it hurt. We're not going to fight back by scrounging supplies and two-man ambushes, Eli. Something's got to change. Elias looked down at his carbon-scarred pistol. Pulled the hammer back, and then looked back up at Alex. Oh yeah? Says who? They find us, we're dead. We ran out of food, we're dead. We die in an ambush, we're dead, Alex replied. So the choice is clear to me. We fight, and along the way, make this place more bearable for everyone. For how long? For as long as it takes, Elias said. Till every tyrannical bastard is dead. Alex stood up and walked to the pistol. He grabbed it and set it in his jacket. Keller, Vixer, and Ferris were still looking at him, but he didn't care. Instead, under his breath, he said, For as long as it takes. Keeley and Shaylee shared a drink at the bar downstairs. Hollis had disappeared, and Alex was washing off a few days' worth of dust and grime. The two gave each other a cheer and knocked back their drinks. So, Vixer said. So? Shaylee replied. That was the extent of most of their conversations. The two women had little in common. Vixer was an ex-Morrison captain. Ferris left New Purgatory because of the Marines. Yet here they were sharing a drink. Is he going to be all right? Vixer asked. He doesn't even seem like the same man. I haven't said it, but the son of a bitch that stared me down and convinced me to join him isn't there anymore. Shaylee poured the two another shot. Really? I see more of who he is than ever. You can tell he's still grieving, but he plays it down in front of us. 6 months ago he had a purpose, a goal, but failed and lost Layla. So you're saying he's fine? Vixer asked. No, he's distressed, but he's still the same man. When I found him in London, he seemed more reserved. In Cairo, he was as bloodthirsty as any of the gladiators. Alex wanted victory at any cost. He wanted to win it all in one shot and bring down Beruger before he became a real threat. He didn't expect Mikhail. Hell, none of us did, Vixer replied. That's what stole his crown. He's a man who has accomplished remarkable things with the help of his friends. Then they started to die, Shaylee replied. The two knocked back their second round. But this, his friend betrays him and kills Layla. He loses a friend, trust, and love in the same day. It's too much for one man, but he keeps enduring in his way. Shaylee continued. Why'd you follow him? Vixer asked. Shaylee's eyes went to her boots. Because I'm stupid. I was drawn by how hopeful he was about New Purgatory, and when he went against Maeva Maris, that earned my respect. He showed her what she had turned into. I didn't know much about him then. Hell, I still don't. But I think he felt like he was looking into a mirror. Maybe. Layla chewed him out pretty good too, Vixer replied. I wonder how he handles that with you and all. Layla and I don't look the same. Your eyes are a darker blue. Your hair is a dirty blonde. Other than that, you two could be confused as sisters. Shaylee shook her head. Did you know she threatened to kill me in Russia? I'm sure she wasn't being serious. She didn't seem that insecure. She saw how you look at Alex, and don't lie. You were obvious about it, Vixer said. Wrong life. Wrong time, Shaylee replied. The two were quiet for a few moments. Shaylee poured another round and the two drank up. Vixer stared at her empty glass after. I know what you mean. Sam. Vixer stopped. Shaylee stared at her for a moment, then poured another drink, which Vixer shot right down. Shaylee had felt sorry for Keeley. She had been on the wrong side of history due to familial pride. Breaking away was likely the hardest thing she had ever done, but making new connections might have been even harder. She caught Hollis slipping into the bar. He was wearing a hood, trying to avoid dancers when someone stopped him. The man looked drunk. Hollis must have bumped into him. The drunk pushed him and forced Hollis's hood down. The bald bounty hunter didn't flinch. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe the drunk didn't notice the scars that ran from the top of Hollis's head down to the side of his face, but he decided to throw a punch. Hollis stepped aside. The drunk had thrown hard and fell to the floor. The bounty hunter put a boot to the back of the man's neck. This anyone's friend? He asked as he looked around the room. A group of men walked up to him. Shaylee and Vixer both reached for their sidearms, but Hollis simply took his boot off the man's neck. Get him home before he threatens someone dangerous. The men nodded and went to pick up the drunk who had begun puking on the dance floor. Hollis put his hood up and made for Shaylee and Vixer. Alex watched all of this play out from the catwalks above the bar. Elias had shown him this spot long ago and told him it was a good place to relax away from everyone. He reached into his coat for the old bottle Jack Newsom had given him a year ago. 1780. There were probably 2 or 3 swigs left, but getting drunk wasn't what he was after. He put the bottle to his lips. He could taste Layla's lipstick and see the old smudge. Every time he hoped for one more kiss, one more embrace, he reached for that bottle. He closed the lid tight and put it back in his coat, hoping one day that feeling would fade. His comm started to ping in his ear. Alex, it was Jack's voice. Drinking alone isn't healthy, you know. The day I start taking addiction advice from an alcoholic, computer or not, is the day I stop drinking for good. Spare me. We both know what you're doing. No one who wants to get drunk takes one swig from a bottle. What do you want, Jack? You're thinking about her again, aren't you? You're chasing her wherever you think you can find her. Alex didn't reply. He had been done playing into Jack's bullshit, even when the man was still alive. Shaylee looks like her. Maybe you should speak with her. No. Kid, if I know anything for sure, it's that misery is a lonely companion to have. Take advantage. Drink with her. Sleep with her. It might help. Moving on isn't the worst thing. Moving on? Moving on. Passing the torch, whatever you want to call it, got you killed. Shot in a tower with Nyala and unceremoniously disposed of. Besides, it's not right. Shaylee might share some similar features, but she isn't Layla. She isn't the woman I fell in love with, the person I couldn't save. Do you really think that matters to Layla now, Alex? Do you think it matters to Shaylee? You need to enjoy your life, not to be alone with your mistakes. That was what I did. It didn't end well for me. Alex shook his head. Fuck off. You only get one in this life, especially in this world. Layla's is over, and so is mine. Now leave me the hell alone. Alex's comm clicked, and Jack's voice no longer spoke. He made his way down to the bar. From the bar, Shaylee saw Alex meandering down the catwalks, looking down on all the people enjoying themselves. She felt sad for him. He was amongst friends, but his mind was with the dead. He was alone. Shaylee knew that this go-around, there would be no feasts, no last meals, no inspirational speeches. There was only the goal. Still, she felt the urge to go after him, bring him down with the team. As small as it was, to relive some of the old glories of past battles, and maybe rekindle Alex's love for the life he led. Hollis and Vixer were engaged in conversations about the benefits of rifles over small arms, all while taking shots whenever one would get the smallest technical detail wrong. Shaylee took their distraction as a chance to slip away and make for the stairs. Scalpels and syringes, sure, not millimeters in caliber, she thought. Alex went inside his apartment and leafed through Layla's journal one more time, rereading passages that made little sense to him. He looked at the bookshelf where his first bullet-scarred journal sat, next to it his second, and finally Jack's little black book of contacts. Alex reached up and pulled his second journal down and replaced it with Layla's. He didn't need it anymore, but he did need to finish his. He grabbed the bottle of 1780 and drained the last 2 swigs in a single go, and then popped off the pen he had left in the journal. He looked down at the last passage that had ended with the word Tyrannicide. As Alex put pen to paper, he was interrupted by his door opening. It was Shaylee. Her short blonde hair was slightly ruffled, and it looked like she was a few drinks deep. "What can I do for you, Miss Ferris?" "Why aren't you downstairs with us?" she asked. Alex thought she was either good at hiding her slurred words, or the last of the 1780 worked too well on him. "Didn't feel like it." "That's a bullshit answer, Velasco." Alex gave her a nod. "Yeah, it is. There are too many memories here, things I'd rather not remember. I'm trying to get past them." Shaylee sat down on the bed beside Alex. "Hiding up here and drinking alone won't take them away. You're sulking." Alex tossed the journal onto the ground and stood up. Shaylee watched the anger rise in his face, but she knew he wouldn't lay a hand on her. Alex turned around and stared at her. "What do you want from me, Shaylee? Do you want me to forget my friends and family, to give them up, to run into your arms and pretend nothing happened?" Shaylee reached out and grabbed Alex by his hands. "I want you to let them go. That doesn't mean you have to forget them. It just means letting them rest. We all carry around bullshit, Alex. I left New Purgatory because there was no hope here. Just a madman who had a need for power. A man that killed my family and convinced my friends that he was vindicated in doing so. But you killed him. You brought hope back to the people here and to me. But losing Layla has killed the part of you that was determined to build something better for people. You're a bitter son of a bitch. When I look at you, I see the same fucking madman that made me want to leave in the first place. I want you to get over yourself, your guilt, and your rage. You're not the Reaper. You never were. In that, Layla was wrong. Everyone else was wrong. You took everything Jack Newsom did and corrected it. Yes, you lost people, but you didn't lose people for nothing like he did. That's a weight you'll have to bear, sure, but you were successful. That's the difference between the two of you. But here you are, wallowing, writing journals no one will see, reliving and replaying moments in your head as if you could do it better if you only had that chance. But you don't, Alex. None of us do. You can only make it right now. Shaylee stood up and pushed herself close to Alex. He tried to look off to the side, but she pulled his head around and kissed him hard on the lips. Alex didn't fight it. Instead, he fell into it, kissing her back until she finally pulled away. After a few breaths, Shaylee spoke again. I want you to enjoy your life for one goddamn day before we all get killed. Please come downstairs and join us. Otherwise, stay up here with your books. See what comfort they give you. With that, Shaylee pulled away from her embrace of Alex and left the room. He felt frozen in place. He kept staring ahead of him where Shaylee had been. Her words hurt. It reminded him of the badgering Layla had given him in Egypt. He could still smell her on his hands and feel her lips on his cheek. That feeling, that warmth, he had forgotten it in the last 6 months. It was welcoming and urged him to get closer to her, but for some reason it felt wrong, like it was a wrong choice he would regret for a long time. Alex was on the brink of changing the world one last time, and as Shaylee said, he was sulking. He gave a glance back at his journal. The pen had landed on it and was bleeding ink onto the page. He ignored it and made back for the bar. Shaylee was surprised to see Alex coming down the stairs and heading towards her, Hollis, and Vixer. "Shit, Ferris, what did you say to him?" Keeley asked. Shaylee gave Vixer a shrug. "What he needed to hear." Alex got over to the bar and waved the bartenders over. 4 shots of tequila." After a few hours, Alex could hardly remember how much he had to drink, but he could tell that for the first time since he, Elias, and Janet were racing away from the prison a year ago, that he was having a fun time. Keller was on his 5th story about a rogue bounty, and now he had to track him through a shit-smelling sewer. "Did Janet ever tell you two about the prison break?" Alex asked as Keller finished his story. Vixer sat back against the bar. "Is that a story I'd want to hear?" "Shit." Vixer smiled and shook her head. "I'm kidding, Alex. She mentioned it, but said if we ever got a chance to ask you about it." Hollis was ordering another drink, and Shaylee was smiling, waiting for Alex. Alex felt the familiar smile come across his own face. This was it. This was what it had been like before. This was how he had won. Oh, shit. It wasn't too long after we met Jack Newsom. Alex told the story in grand detail, starting with meeting Jack Newsom at the club, then how Jack made grandiose promises about fighting John Morrison and the gift of the GTO. His team was enthralled when he told them about speeding away from the prison and being pinned down by an APC turret. He had been trying to drive while Janet was smoking Ghana and shooting behind him. "It felt like we were making a difference. Sure, it was hell at the time, but we all felt invincible. None of us had died yet, just a bunch of kids giving big boy toys and taking it to the overconfident, arrogant idiots on their level. That was before China, before the tower, before we found out how mortal we all are." Hollis was sitting on the bar with a drink in his hands. "Do you regret it? Would you change anything?" Regret. The thought of that word made Alex think of Layla. He forced himself to tell the truth and not deflect. "I regret not everyone survived. I wanted to save them all, see this new world we made. I thought we would, but that was me lying to myself. A war like this means you're going to lose people, sometimes the people you're closest to." Hollis nodded. Vixer put down another glass while Shaylee watched Alex intently. "The only thing we can do now is live well for those who sacrificed. Keep fighting for what they believed in." Vixer raised an eyebrow to Alex. "Do you really believe that helps?" Alex smiled back at the old Morrison captain. "I didn't at first, but we can't sit here pretending we can change the past. We'll never be able to bring them back, but we can make sure their names are never forgotten." He looked at the digital clock that hung above the bar. 12 past midnight. It was time to get some sleep. "It's the end of the world tomorrow, guys, and I need to rest up. Enjoy yourselves. We'll talk tomorrow." As Alex made for the exit, Shaylee caught up to him. She knew he was heading outside rather than up to the apartment. She grabbed him by the hand. The street was empty, a strange sight for a night in New Purgatory. Alex turned around and faced her. "You were right," he said, looking down at her hand on his. "This was good. Exactly what I needed." Shaylee smiled at him. She wanted to kiss him, but forced herself not to move any closer. She looked down at their hands. "Alex, is there... I know this is hard of me to ask of you, but... well, is there any chance of..." Alex smiled, but it was somber. He felt bad for Shaylee. Felt bad she felt the need to ask, that he couldn't give her what it was she wanted from him. He wished his sad smile was all it would take to explain it to her. "It would feel like a betrayal," Alex said, gripping Shaylee's hand tightly. "I want to, but it wouldn't be right. I know that's terrible, and I know she's gone, but I feel like she's always watching me." Shaylee nodded, a couple of tears in her eyes. She gripped back at Alex's hand, and then let them go. "I know what you mean. Good night, Alex. Good night, Shaylee." Berlin in the middle of December. One of the non-augmented soldiers had told Janet that it was a rarity to catch the city on a sunny day, regardless of the season. What made it more eerie was that there were no clouds in the sky. The dome-shaped building that marked the center of Berlin was like a polished obsidian stone. The solar panels for Berlin's Cloudbreaker reactor were charging. Janet couldn't see the energy being absorbed, but she marveled at the dark structure, seemingly taking in the sun's light for its own use. Beside her, on the hell chopper, stood Maeve Maris, General Androv, and General Cale Woodson. Tandori Shazari was not present, as his nation was still building. But Janet knew the truth. Baruger didn't trust the Japanese after China had been taken down. It was a meeting of all the military leaders in the world. If he wanted to, he could kill all of us on this goddamn bird, Maeve Maris said aloud. Everyone except Janet turned to look at the Maeve. What? We're all thinking it. It's what I would do if I had this many enemies in one spot. He won't. Not yet. He wants Alex dead first. But after... Woodson's voice trailed off. Politics, Androv said aloud. If we fight, we destroy democracy. We tried to do it the right way, and Baruger played the game better than any of us. Janet kept staring out the window. She heard every word. Military personnel acting like children who had their toys stolen. What about you, Janet? You got a take on all this? Woodson asked. Janet shook her head. You don't want my take. I asked you, didn't I? If you're asking me if I'd rather fight a war than kill my last friend, then you already know the answer. Janet turned around and looked at the pilots in the cockpit. Behind her, through the window, the rest of the group could see several hundred hell choppers filled with troops from every nation under the council. If you want an answer to how we survive all this, well, that answer is behind me. This isn't in our hands anymore. What we need is a miracle. Alex woke up alone in his bed. His journal was lying on the floor. The ink spot was deep on the page where he had left it. He didn't care anymore. He pulled himself out of bed and made for the shower. Hot water, he thought. There was nothing like it. He threw up once or twice, a byproduct of the tequila and whatever other swill he had drank the night before. He drank in the shower water. When he got out, he went to his drawer. Janet had left him fatigues, Morse in black and grays, digitized. Only fitting, I suppose. He put them on, threw on his long socks, followed by a pair of black boots, black undershirt, black shirt. On the door hung his coat, the least clean article of clothing in the room. That same duster he came to Alonso's with a year ago. Alex threw it around his shoulder and made for the main room. The team was sitting around the table. Vixer was cleaning her rifle, Ferris was going through her medical kit, and Hollis was picking his teeth with a pocket knife. Alex turned and looked at the long blade above the door to his room. He reached up and grabbed it, and then set it on the table. He took his place at the head. Vixer got up and made her way over to him. First, she set down a rifle, no different than any he had used before. Next was the pistol, the carbon fire scarred pistol that once belonged to his best friend. Vixer didn't say a word as she did so. She just went back to take her seat again. Alex said nothing. He didn't need to. This wasn't the Crusaders or the Sentinels. This was a group of terrorists, a ragtag group of murderers, plain and simple. Alex felt a sense of relief from the night before. He was finally able to cut loose and relax. But now, he was ready for what was to come. After a cup of coffee, the team began to settle in. Alex reached into his duster and pulled out the tape he had got back in Australia. This is what's going to turn the tide. He set it down and opened a laptop sitting on the desk. Jack Newsom appeared on the screen. Alex flipped the laptop around. Jack looked around the room, though Alex wondered if he could see anybody. Alex is right, though the less you know, the better. If you're all to stop Thomas Baruger, your first step is to take over a communications tower. The old man's image winked away and was replaced by a map of Berlin and its exterior territory. The largest array is the one we need. I expect it to be guarded, but not heavily. It's located just outside Berlin in the German dead zone. We can expect to be picked up by the trackers. And they'll know we're coming, Hollis said. They already expect an attack. I've been in contact with Janet, Newsom replied. The other nations are playing the role they have to play, but it's all an act. Shaley shook her head. What does this tape do? Alex put it the right way. It'll turn the tide, Jack said. That doesn't help my understanding, Hollis said. Then you'll just have to wait and see, Alex answered, because even I don't know if it'll work. He closed the laptop and looked at his team. We leave in the next hour. Bring everything you need and prep for infiltration. The old man is right. We're not going into this as a team of 4. We're going in as a world united.